Hello, Final Fantasy Randomizer fans, and welcome to the second qualifier for SG Live 2021. I'm Velik, I'll be one of your commentators today, and joining me on this lovely afternoon is Weirdo. Weirdo, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. I like short walks in the apartment where it's air conditioned and delivery food.
Perfect. You know, no one said this couldn't double as a speed dating stream as well. It's only changing one word anyway. So, welcome to Speed Dating Live 2021. On screen
Right.
today, we'll be watching Dark Moon EX and Life Reboot. This should be a pretty fun race, I think. Checking out the flag set, it looks like it'll be a relatively quick race. I think times from the first qualifier look like they were sub an hour for a lot, so shouldn't take too long.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was under the impression of too. Is that we would have 45 or 50-minute match, and we should be. I mean, we're waiting for the runners. They are on a delay, so when they start, they're off to the races. We do see some interesting party compositions, and there we are.
Oh, yep, and they are already off. Yes, for a quick background, as we see what our first level weapons, armors, and spells are. For the background, the draft for today's team, why it seems maybe a little bit weird taking 2 white mages, a black belt, and a fighter, is because party comp is created off of a draft. So each player was given the same pool of 6 characters. In case today I took a peek at the seed to check, and it was a single fighter, 2 white mages, a thief, and 2 black belts. So from that pool of 6 characters, they had to choose their 4, and that's how we ended up with these interesting comps that we're seeing here.
Oh, excellent. Well, and there we found our first key item of the game. We have the rod, and of course, a shop item in Canaria means it's going to cost very low relatively. So only 853 gold for that rod. So that's something we don't need right away, but we will certainly come back and pick that up before we leave the Inner Sea.
Oh, most certainly, and that is one of the cheapest shop items I've ever seen for an incentive. I mean, we're under $1,000 here, so there's a very good chance that our runners will check some early chests, maybe here in Temple of Fiends, maybe they'll mosey on over to Dwarf Cave, even Matoya, because they find one chest with 1,000 gold, which is relatively easy, and they'll immediately already have that incentive item.
Or you find one katana +2 and you go to the nice little weapon shop and you say, give me all the cash. Since nobody took a thief, right? So we have fighter, black belt, double white mage. That katana is just early cash.
Yeah, that's a good point. Katanas sell for, I want to say, around 7,000, maybe 5,000, something like that.
Well, it is, the values are randomized a little bit, so we'll see in the shop, but it'll be worth quite a bit.
Right, definitely. And we saw our first Garland kill. It was already off screen. He was there, and now he's not.
Yeah, I think these Gurims and werewolves are putting up more of a fight than Garland.
Looks like we started with the Canal and the Key, 2 pretty good items to start off the bat. You'll notice that Dark Moon did not immediately go to the Coneria Castle Armory, mainly because there's no incentive item there in this flag set, although it could still very well be a good 6 chests to check. And wow, that's a hefty sum of money off that katana, 25,000. I almost feel bad for Life Reboot on our other side here, having a thief and most likely keeping the katana for being a great endgame weapon, because that amount of money at the beginning of the game is going to immediately boost you through buying everything from Coneria, Provoca, and most likely Elfland as well.
Oh, I would say that's going to carry you through like basically all of your spells up until like level 5 or 6.
Oh yeah.
And possibly all of those, depending on what world where. So, yeah, Dark Moon is set for cash and making his way around. Life Reboot does have to reset, but manages to get through the random encounter and the Garland fight.
So we're seeing Coneria Armory here on the left side. Little bit extra little chunk of change, and a Quake Stick. That's a very good early weapon. And not only is Quake just a great spell all around to be casting on big packs of enemies, there's a lot of things that'll just immediately die from a Quake cast. Is If you notice the pool that our players were drafting from, there were no black magic casters, at least not until we promote the thief to a ninja, which means any black magic we can get our hands on right now is going to be a game changer.
Yeah, I always think of it in two ways. You want to have single target damage for your bosses, which is typically your fighter, your black belt, your melees, and some spells. And then you want your sweepers to get rid of through all these random encounters. And that Quake staff is going to do a huge amount. That's one of our few real sweepers that we're going to have access to.
Absolutely. And another important point of that as well is that this flag set does include unrunnable encounters, which means if our runners run into packs of, 6, 7, 8 enemies that's unrunnable, they're gonna really love having a Quake Stick now.
Yeah, even if you can defeat them, even if they're relatively easy enemies, it just takes so much time because with the way the initiative system works, you could be sitting there waiting for all 8 or 9 enemies to take their turn before you get a chance to attack them.
Alright, getting our first look at level 2 magic, we find Wall, very helpful. Going to be going through this flag set. Wall is going to mean your fighter, black belt, and possibly your white mages if they make it far in Fiend fights, going to be protected from magic. Obviously very important. I will note there is an incentivized ribbon out there, so we might find some good magic defense that way, but Wall is absolutely the best backup, and in most cases, a desirable spell for endgame regardless.
Right, and with 2 white mages, the number and the fighter, the number of casts we have of it is going to be pretty high because everybody's going to have access.
That's very true. I always forget that. One of my weak points is spell permissions, and I always have to take a second to think about what does the knight get as far as white magic goes. But I believe they do get all of the level 2 white magic slots, so that Wall will be learnable.
Absolutely.
Watching our pirates fall into a crack here created in the ground. Looks like just one survived.
Alright, and Dark Moon picking up a couple of silver bracelets and saving too. That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't believe buffed pirates or unsafe pirates are turned on, but in a vanilla mix-up, Vicky is giving us our ship.
What? Can we re-roll this seed, please?
Right, so it's just too close to a normal game, This is supposed to be a randomizer. Our runners can't expect Bicky to be giving us a ship. What's next? We gonna find Floater in Ice Cave?
Well, it is incentivized and it is in the vanilla location, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
It's entirely possible. Sadly, we won't be able to see our runners go that direction for a little bit still because there was no free canoe. There have been a lot of flag sets that I've been running recently that have had free canoe turned on, but not this time. So our runners will have to go over, most likely towards Marsh, though they do have the canal, so Earth Cave is obviously an option as well, because Earth Cave in this flag set is incentivized, but it is behind gating. So both our runners here have their rods so they can get behind gating, which for anyone new to the flag sets, when behind gating is set for Earth, it just means that there will be an incentive item in some chest behind the rod lock, so only on the 4th floor, as that's the only chest there. But Sea and Sky are also behind gating, which means for Sky, you're behind cube lock somewhere. And for C, I believe behind gating means... actually, I'm not entirely sure. Weirdo, do you know what that behind gating means?
I actually don't know either, because the whole dungeon is behind a gate.
That's kind of what I thought too, and now I'm wondering, I should probably go check that real quick on the flags, but does it mean that the chest is guaranteed to be TFC since it's also key locked, or... I'll have to check that real quick.
Yeah, we'll have to... Sea Shrine is always TFC, I'm seeing in chat. Well, in addition to that, we have, good news and bad news in the magic. So level 3 nuke, so that Ninja will be able to cast it. And then Fade and Invis 2 on the same level. So your Sweeper and one of your big endgame defensive buffs is also going to be on the same spell level. So level 4. So we'll get a few charges of it on our white mages, but that's not the best place to have it.
I think I can hear the sigh of relief from our runners finding Fade for their white mages, because that is probably the one thing that they were crossing their fingers on. No black magic means Fade is, outside of, the luck of finding the Quake Stick, Fade becomes pretty much your secondary objective. They're trying to find that as fast as possible to have easy access to good sweeper magic.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other thing to go with that too, though, is that it's level 4. So that means we're going to need a few more levels before we get there, and we're going to have to do some grinding without Fade to get enough charges to be able to use it effectively.
And to accomplish that, it looks like, I believe Life Reboot is over in Northwest Castle Lock right now on the trap tiles. I saw Giants. Not sure what the other trap tile was. I might have missed that, but looks like it wasn't good enough to stick around for much longer than that, or we might be saving going back in. Yes, we are. All right. So it looks like Life Reboot will be trying to get those charges as fast as possible. And I really cannot blame him for this move.
No, this is a good move. One of my favorite FFR players, and also probably the best, one of the top 2 FFR coaches, is on it saying, especially in Black Belt Seeds, he who grinds first wins.
Yes, that's a very good point. And although certainly it comes with a caveat of you want to find a good grind spot, not just any grind spot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there is, something to be said for gaining key items to improve, or orbs, depending on which flag is set, to increase your experience gain. But even just getting enough to where you can run through these dungeons fast is a huge thing.
Absolutely. I think with that black belt in the party, seeing some big grinds is going to be a priority, though. Not only are you going to have a stronger team making killing things faster, but once you get that grind out of the way, you'll see a lot of enemies start running away from your higher level character in the first slot. And so I would not be surprised to see characters start getting killed off and XP just being funneled directly into the black belt for that very purpose.
Yeah, although I wonder, especially with the fighter, because the fighter's a better tank, just in term, at least for the first, for the middle levels, right up. So it depends on how far you want to grind that black belt. We don't have terribly difficult bosses or anything, so it is sort of a risk to see how high do you want to go, because a 32 black belt is going to be plenty, and then it's damage, and it's getting through, and it's getting away from unrunnable encounters and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Since the scaling for our fiends as well as our monsters is only 50% to 200%, and that's locked HP scaling as well, so there's no separate there, which means we could very well see a chaos with, 1,000 to 1,500 hit points. That's not going to be an impossible roll, and in that case, 32 black belt very well might 1 or 2 round that chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. One Punch Man may be in the house. And we see that we got the bottle out of Marsh Cave, so possibly necessary, but nice to know where it is and to get out of there with it. But we'll see if that was actually a good use of time or not.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to tell, given that, we'll never see what's actually going to come from the fairy inside that bottle until we find our floater. And even then, it could be very late in the game. The floater could pop up somewhere, such as ordeals, and maybe our runners don't check that now for a while. And, late game bottle means it's a much higher chance of it being something that might be unnecessary to the team, whether that's one of the incentivized items, which is the masa and a ribbon in this case, or even the tail. Who knows? Maybe this is a fast enough seed and easy enough that our runners aren't considering promoting for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Promotion is not required in any case, so the speedboat still trips me up.
I'm a big fan of the speedboat here.
Yeah, it just makes all that time I spent trying to figure out how to route, sea encounters and which way to drive for maximum efficiency. And it's like, nope, you don't need that anymore. We going vroom vroom.
Yeah. I am interested to see, though, given that we still haven't found our canoe or our floater, I wonder if we're going to see some runners do the vanilla pathing of actually sailing all the way around to Crescent to check and see what Lucane and the Circle of Sages has for us.
Well, and you don't have to beat Earth Cave for that, since well, No, I didn't
Oh,
see that. I saw early Sarda is on, early King was on, but I didn't see whether the Sages were available before Earth.
oh, yep, you are correct. I'm looking back at the flags right now. The early Sage is not turned on, which means in order for our runners to get their item from Crescent Lake, they're going to need to take out the Earth Fiend first.
No, they just have to walk to the bottom of Earth. There is no Earth Fiend. There's just, I mean, there's just some random encounters. No big deal.
Oh, did I even miss that as well? Fiends are actually turned off.
No, I'm being silly, and I'm saying
Oh,
that Lich doesn't count as a fiend.
I gotcha. Road bump.
Yeah, he's. Oh, we don't want to see that
Oh
Phantom.
yeah, we find Darkmoon finds the absolute worst tile you can in the Phantom tile. Not only is the Phantom one of the hardest base monsters to kill with its high stats, it also gives just the lowest possible XP. I believe it's somewhere in the double digits of XP.
I thought it was 1 XP, 1 gold.
Oh, it might be that bad. So
But
normally,
either way, it's not worth fighting if you can avoid fighting it.
absolutely. And for anyone who's not terribly familiar with the game out there, normally the Phantom would be the trap tile that appears in Temple of Fiends Revisited. And normally, by that point in the game, you're not really looking for a grind spot. You certainly don't need any gold when you can't use it. And so that enemy popping up anywhere is just bad news.
Yep, certainly power scaled for the late game too. And Darkmoon is killing all the bats that get in his way as he makes his way down. Both our runners running through Earth Cave, and those are some shiny gauntlets we got there. Not very good gauntlets, but lamp -3, so...
You know, according to some people, Lamp is the absolute most important spell to get in any seed.
It is. How else are you going to see your way?
It's true. I mean, when your characters get darkness on them, it's just about the only way to remove them, and it sounds bad. So obviously, you just need to do everything in your power to get rid of darkness being put on any of your party members.
Yep, absolutely. No, darkness is one of those spells that by the time you encounter it, it's probably not going to do enough to hurt you. And the way two-hit scaling and caps work in this game, which is what it really affects, it doesn't really make much of a difference. So that's why Lamp is turned into a meme.
Yeah, you can basically just ignore darkness as if it's not even happening. If it's a free turn that the monster, whatever it is casting it upon you.
Yep. Well, I'm also a big fan of Know Your Meme. So
Very fair point.
Because the more you know.
Looks like we got both runners right now simultaneously taking out large undead packs with Harm 3 or Dia 3, as Darkmoon EX has the fun percent flags turned on. That changes the spell names to more familiar ones to fans of the Final Fantasy series. Certainly Dia is a name seen in later Final Fantasies, where Harm was the original name in Final Fantasy. So you can sort of see the difference. So if you notice any spells that are not named the same between our two runners, that is the explicit reason.
Yeah, and for people like me, it's very confusing because I haven't really played most of the rest of the games very much. Oh, that Sun Sword +2, that's actually a nice endgame weapon. It's not Moss immune, but it is an all-around effective weapon. It doesn't have the trade-offs involved with something like Vorpal, which is probably not great for this seed, so I'm sure Darkmoon is very happy to find that, and I'm pretty sure Life Reboot found it too.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Normally, Vorpal would be an endgame weapon that a lot of runners would love to see show up in their inventories, but given that our Fiends are going to be scaled 50% to 200%, there's a very good chance that their Absorb is going to be next to nothing, meaning that crit rate isn't actually necessary to kill anything. A lot of times we'll see runners get to Chaos who has high Absorb, and they may do like 10 hits for 10 damage or something that just feels awful because of high Absorb. But in a flag set like this, there's a more than likely chance that that's just not going to be a problem.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's one of those trade-offs, and the higher the percentages you have on the bosses, the more likely you are to need those crits to get through. And here comes Life Reboot around the corner on the home stretch. Just, 3 or 4 more random encounters, and he'll be on his way.
It's interesting that we've seen so many encounters spaced very close together on the table, though. The encounter rate for this flag set for dungeons is only 0.5, which is lower than a lot of the normal seeds that you'll see as far as encounter rates go. And right you are, what a speed bump that was. Lich 1 already down on Life Reboot's side, and we have our first runner with an orb lit at about 19 minutes and 16 seconds. Also, yes,
Yeah.
we, I think, forgot to announce that the herb was found there on the 4th floor of Earth, meaning that our runners can now head over towards Elfland and wake up the prince and see where we're headed next.
And I would probably boat my way over to Crescent Lake first. I'm kind of wondering, so this is kind of which way do you go? Life Reboot definitely taking the smart route and using the southern dock for Elfland.
Yeah, I would definitely say that's the well, it might not make too much of a difference with the fast ship turned on, but I think if you're really getting into the nitty-gritty level of optimization, stopping by the southern dock, checking what herb turns into, and then heading over to Crescent probably saves you a few frames.
Well, this is speed gaming, right? We are here to go fast.
And getting a look at Elf Armory containing nothing but gold, which, good and bad, I mean, it could be
It's
worse.
the treasury.
It's a very fair point. Well, I think we'll be hurting the elves' development now that we've stolen all their money, though.
Honestly, Ribbit Finder, Lich went by too fast for me to notice.
Oh man,
whether he used Quake on it or not.
if we missed a cake on Lich, I'll be very upset, because that is a incredibly fun strat to just take. I mean, certainly if you have a white mage with a Quake stick, there's no reason not to just give it a shot.
Oh yeah, whoever had that Quake stick, I'm sure used it, but is also weak enough that if we used other things to get through him, I mean, that Harm 3 could have taken out Lich too.
Oh, absolutely. So, Life Reboot heading around to Crescent in the vanilla method, which is taking that outside dock and then walking all the way down and around to get to the city. And hopefully from there, thinking about what our runners have left that they could possibly get at this point to open up the world more, since the incentive placement does have to make sense, and we are quickly losing options for finding ourselves like a canoe. I'm assuming that either Crescent is going to turn into the canoe, we might see a ruby come from the Circle of Sages that allows us over to Sarda, as well as the Titan's Trove is also incentivized. Or the crystal maybe for Matoya, maybe some TNT or adamant. Just it's got to be something else that is actually accessible at this point.
Yeah, it does have to be progression because everything else is blocked up. And riverboat.
All right, well that canoe does open up some other choices for us. We might see our runners either head north towards Ice Cave. Sadly, Volcano is not incentivized, so even though it is accessible now, we might not necessarily need to go there. Or the canoe also, with the canal, gives us access to ordeals, so we might see a runner head down that direction. And personally, if I was at this point in the seed, I might be more willing to head towards ordeals at this point. Given that you're not going to get any black magic for warp, you might as well sort of bite the bullet and just kind of take it.
Well, usually the warp and exit, to me, honestly, I usually find them as more critical for ice to cut out the loops. And especially ice has a few more different types of enemies, which in Randomizer, it's much less about what the enemies are and more about how many types, because we're shuffling scripts, we're shuffling spells, and you never know who's going to get that nuke, that death touch, etc.
That is a very good point. And our tracker pointing out that I really need to read the flags because I keep missing these very important ones. In order to get into ordeals, you do need the crown today. Early ordeals flag is not turned on. I personally, I don't think I've ever actually played a flag set with that turned off, and so it's a good thing I'm not racing today, because I absolutely would have walked down to Ordeals and then been very sad to find out I couldn't get inside without the crown.
Yeah, it is a very, very common flag for us in this community. So, but we'll see. As Life Reboot enters Ice, and here Darkmoon is going to do some shopping before picking up his canoe.
Yeah, I think our lines are pretty well delegated today. There's not really anywhere else these runners could be going at the moment, so we'll probably see the same from Darkmoon, picking up the canoe and then heading north towards Ice. Because I don't believe Northern Docks are turned on, which Northern Docks is a flag that would normally give you access to, say, the Onrat continent, in which case Waterfall would have also been an option with the canoe, but without the Northern Docks, I think that continent is locked to airship only.
That sounds right to me. And then, I mean, the only other real option is Volcano, but up here goes Darkmoon. Oh, going to Ice.
Yep, Darkmoon taking the northern direction into Ice. I think it saves a little bit of routing through the canal system, which, given that a lot of the canal monsters are seen mostly just as annoying chaff, I can understand the need to cut that down as much as possible instead of sailing all the way around from Crescent.
Well, and especially with Speedboat.
Exactly. Any time you can save yourself by using that boat is going to be, a large amount of time saved in the end.
Yep, and here Life Reboot gets a small undead pack, and I mean, not exactly the vanilla pack, but oh wow.
Ooh, Frostwolves with Zap, that is scary.
He's lucky he only got one Frostwolf there, he would have been wiped.
Oh
and
no.
Of course. No, isn't that a white mage that's up?
Yeah, but he's out of life casts. Is he gonna try and go all the way through just to see if he can get his incentive item and bounce? I think at this point you might have to either, well, you might scout. I think that might be what he's doing here, checking the other chests.
Yeah, it's you see if there's a reason to come get any of these. The Procate +3, Ice Armor -1. Those are both upgrades, I'm pretty sure. So, I mean, the Ice -1 is, I'm not totally certain it's an upgrade, but it probably is.
I think I might have missed what his fourth slot was wearing, but I saw Wood +3. Oh, that was on the Thief. Ah. Well, certainly
I think he's got a
Ice.
silver bracelet. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that does probably still end up being an upgrade, and given that we're in Ice right now, well, spell scripts are shuffled, so there's no, necessity. We'll see Ice Magic for the reduced elemental damage.
Yep, this is Randomizer. We have no idea what we'll get on any particular monster.
Oh no, Stun Touch coming in from the Red Bones. That might just be a wipe if the White Mage can't get back up in time.
Oh, I wouldn't have waited. I would have reset out of this already as soon as I got stunned that first time.
Yep, there's that reset. Can't blame him for that.
Yep, Darkmoon using those Fade charges, or Holy, sorry. See, level 11 is a reasonable level to be in Ice at. It on the lower end, but doable. I usually think of like maybe 9 or 10 is like the absolute minimum, but I want a little bit more.
Yeah, I always find myself a little bit afraid of Ice. Certainly I'll go to Marsh first if it's an option over Ice, for example. Just because Ice, to me at least, feels like it's a little bit longer, and it has more trap tiles, at least, if you want to get to the chests. So it always feels a little bit more dangerous to me.
Yeah, the enemies are a little bit higher level. They do a little bit more melee damage, so that's one of the big things.
Of course, the trade-off for that is you are going to get more experience from the mobs inside of Ice Cave as well, though. Meaning you should come out of it at a much better level. Ooh, we found the water tile. So this is a dangerous tile to find, but is definitely a good grind if these waters are pretty easy to kill.
They look like they rolled up on spell resist, or maybe this is just the natural, but that second round goes through, does a lot of damage, and he clears him out, picks up a level, and a piece of cloth for his trouble.
Not exactly a worthwhile chest after taking the waters, but maybe better than nothing. I think he has the silver bracelets on everyone, though.
Yeah, and Life Reboot, having seen that last time and managed to run away from it, says, no thank you, I am fully hydrated, and let's go check out this next floor. So Life Reboot has caught back up and has pulled ahead of Darkmoon slightly. Although, Darkmoon does still have the bottle.
Alright, we see our eye tile actually is Frost Dragons. Another pretty good tile if you got the magic for it, but can be very scary. And then inside our ice incentive chest, we have found the TNT. So again, we had to have some sort of progression here. We're at the point where we simply cannot have something that's not progression. So we'll probably be going directly over the dwarves after this to see what that TNT turns into.
Yeah, and that it sort of makes sense that Frost Dragons would be an ice cave, huh? I mean, they just got promoted a floor.
That is very on brand, noting that the trap tiles for this flag set are shuffled, so we certainly didn't need to see that inside Ice Cave. But I would definitely say that's better than the Phantom tile we found in Earth, because if the Phantom was the one blocking one of these incentive chests, I think our runners would be a little bit more sad.
Yeah, that's tough. That tells me, like, reset out. Well, you take your one shot and you got to grind for that, because that Phantom it hits hard, and I mean, I guess with the fades now you have a shot at it.
So we got a question in chat why Life Reboot still has a dead black belt on the ground. My best guess might be that we haven't found the greatest or safest grind location for that black belt to be brought up, or it's possible that Life Reboot is deciding that his end game win condition is either going to be on the knight or the ninja, in which case the black belt is sort of unnecessary. Because certainly 3-man is very doable inside this flag set, and maybe even for some of our more gutsy runners, a 2-man comp could have almost worked, given that our scaling could end up making the Fiends paper thin.
Yeah, this is the type of scaling where I don't know if you were around for Shadow Walker, but he would do dives into the Temple of Fiends revisited at like level 17, and he would just see what was down there, and he's one of the fastest runners I've seen. So it's one of those, like, the black belt is great when you need a black belt, when you need, massive amounts of power. But if he's the one that's dead and he's not ever going to get up to a reasonable level, then he's just soaking XP that's better off placed on somebody that's going to swing a sword, and we've got swords. I mean, sword chucks, yo.
And over on Darkmoon's side, we're getting our look at what the TNT turned into, which was the crystal, I believe. So we'll be walking over to Matoya next, or did I just completely misread that? And also
TNT to crystal.
Yep. And also we saw the ruse stick up in the top dwarf chests, which is definitely a good endgame item for this group. Throw that on either the knight or the ninja at endgame, and they'll not be taking any amount of hits. A temper helmet as well, another amazing magic item to be finding for this flag set. Again, going back to the fact that we don't have any black magic casters on Darkmoon's side, and we won't have any black magic casters on Life Reboot's side until promotion, which we still haven't found our tail. So finding that temper helmet in and of itself is sort of a win condition for this group.
Yeah, and just to make that clear, so experience is typically spread amongst the party, so you get a set amount. If you have 12,000 experience and you have 4 characters up, then each one would get 3,000 experience. right? 12 divided by 4. But if you have 3 characters up, each one would get 4,000 experience. 12 divided by 3. And yes, I am willing to do math on Twitch. But it's one of those things that we do have flags where that does not work. So it's all a matter of what adjustments have we made in the particular flag set that we're running today. So there's a huge number of flags, and there's all sorts of weird things you can do to this game.
Absolutely, and even more so, there are some flag sets where you might want your dead characters to be gaining XP. There is a possibility of turning on taverns in this game, which when you go to any of the cities, instead of finding a clinic, you'll find a pub, and you can actually recruit party members either over an empty slot or another character, in which case you might want that slot that's getting recruited over to have been gaining XP the whole time.
Yep, I know I'm really good at, picking locks and running away, but in my heart, I've always been a healer. Right, so they just turn into a white mage, they get their levels, and then you get to go buy spells, and so yeah, it's a really neat mode, and our devs are amazing and have done a huge amount of customization as options for this game.
Absolutely. Shout out to the devs. They have made this randomizer game incredible, in my opinion. When I first joined, I had no idea the amount of just flags and different sorts of runs that you could be doing with this. And I gotta say, I'm having more and more fun every single time I run into a new flag set. But not to take away from the shout out to the devs, we do on screen have both our runners finding their floaters. And so we might see some route divergence now that we can go get into the air. Since we have the crown, Ordeals is now opened, and then with the canoe, we could also see Waterfall, as well as getting the slab translated and possibly turned in at Lefane. So let's go ahead and see what our runners are going to end up doing.
And Dark Moon could also turn in the bottle at Gaia, so it's one of those, you've got some choices, and it's just a matter of where do you want to go. Gaia Lefane is a common combo. Waterfall I would probably hold off on until we can go diving. But I mean, who knows? We'll see what the runners decide.
Yep, yeah, it's pretty open right now. I think with the proximity of where you get the airship to the bottle of Fane, I think that would be my call personally. But if any of these runners end up going somewhere else, I'm sure they'll have a good reason for doing that as well. We see Life Reboot going back up to Crescent, doing a little bit of shopping, and then flying towards Sarda, maybe? I forgot Sarda's on the table now, too.
This is the long way to Sarda, but...
Alright, we get to see what Sarda's got for us. The early Sarda flag is turned on. Normally you would have to kill the vampire if it was turned off, which both our runners, of course, have already taken care of. And we see Sarda passing us our musical instrument for the day.
Right, no funny flags on for that. There are some fun percent flags, so cosmetic changes only. But that loot is required for the end game, but does not make much of a difference right now, other than we have everything we need. Now we need to kill some fiends, and we need that Oxyel, we need the chime, we need the cube. We need our sky.
I know. One of the things I love yelling is sky, 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 but sadly we haven't found either the chime or the cube yet.
Yep, they can't take the sky chant away from me.
It's always in my heart. But who knows? Maybe we'll see right here a vanilla cube at Lefane, maybe?
And Gaia's armor shop, gold +4, gold bracelets +4, pro ring +2, but 40 something K and 20 something K, so expensive armor, but very high quality.
And we do vanilla cube at Lefane. Let's go. Is this even a randomized seed?
And then the other nice thing, so we still need the chime though. We got to get in the front door before we can use that cube.
Well, maybe we'll see that right from the ferry right now, released out of the bottle. Another quick note for anyone who might have been keeping track. With the Blursings, our fighter cannot wear a pro ring, sadly, so we might I think our runners are a little bit lucky. They've definitely got the Pro Cape to sort of get around that, but will not be able to.
Velik, did you run this seed before?
I did not know, but I did definitely download the ROM and take a look at everything. Oh, you mean for calling the chime? You know,
Yes.
it's almost feeling like that, isn't it? But in my defense, there are very few incentives left in the pool, so I had a pretty good chance at guessing what it was.
Yep. Nope, you're a witch.
Well, with our cube and chime now found, I can officially start chanting, "Sky, sky, sky."
Sky. It's 4 skies.
Oh, sorry. You're right. I did miss
No,
the one.
I realize the common one that has taken over, but I'm one of the 3 original disciples of Sky.
Well, I certainly tip my hat to you because it is one of my favorite things to chant in chat now.
Oh. Excuse me. So Dark Moon level 14. He's a touch low, but if he goes into Sky, that one of the reasons I love it so much is that, well, it has a lot of boxes, so if you're looking for gear, that's a good place. But also, especially like Sky 2 is spider floor, people hate it because the boxes are so spread out, but it's also very, very good experience. Just about every encounter there is high experience, relatively easy to kill, so we just run through all of them. We leave a trail of blood and enjoy our levels.
Yes, ADR pointing out in chat, actually, I think I'm a bit of a dingus. LaFane normally gives you the chime. It's the robot that gives you the cube, but I always suppose I forget that since we're always randomized here. For the question in chat, this is definitely randomized then, since things are a bit backwards, but in my defense, it's both items linked to Sky.
Yep, Life Reboot has dropped his thief, but moving his fighter up into the first place. Which is always sort of like the first position takes more hits during combat, but is also that's the character you use to determine things like running away and surprise and all those sorts of things. So it's always an interesting balance of which character do you want to be in your first slot.
Yep, I believe it's a 50% chance that the first character gets targeted, a 25% chance that the second character gets targeted, and then a 12.5% chance for both the third and fourth slots.
Yep, that's my understanding of the math too.
As well as the stats for running and first strike, it's luck based for your chance to run from a fight, and then agility is what preemptive strikes or ambushes are also dependent on. And with our Blursings, having that fighter with a +7 luck means they are a little bit better than normal for running, as well as the White Mage having -10 agility means we should never see one in the first slot in terms of just random encounters.
Right. Yeah, just the thief normally gets more agility and luck, so it's always a question of how does the blurs, the blessing or curse compare to their base stats and their level growth and what level you're at, and plenty of things to keep up with if you're worried about all the details.
Yeah, which actually, I believe in this flag set, our thieves have 80 base agility. That flag is turned on, which means if they were in our first slot, they should be doing a pretty good job of preventing ambushes and getting us some additional first strikes. But, of course, you really have to then decide, is it worth putting the character that's easier to kill up front or not? And we found ourselves an I-Tile in Ordeals. This is probably going to be the absolute best grind slot, and I would not be surprised if Darkmoon tries to kill everyone off but the black belt right now to take that. But if he walks right by it, I don't know what I'm talking about.
It's not quite the best location, so especially without an exit, it's very difficult to escape from that location if you're going to kill off characters. So if you're going to commit to that grind, you got to commit real hard. But you got to ride that line of, is this too dangerous or not? Life Reboot is also doing a bit of a grind, but has ended his grind on a red dragon in Waterfall. So took a little bit of levels, but still had some heals. Did not run himself all the way down, so guaranteeing that he could escape.
I believe Darkmoon is just following your advice immediately by trying to make sure that he has an easy escape if he does go ahead and take this grind. Checking the trap tile in front of the throne to see what he would have to deal with to get out of here, and it being a couple of images, looks like he's back on the eye tile, thinking that it might be a relatively safe grind.
Yeah, and the gear that he took off, right? So he's making it easier for the rest of his characters to die off. So it looks like he's intending a black belt grind.
And I really can't blame him, because a 1500 XP per member right now means that a solo black belt will be getting 6000 XP per eye. Means that we should see level 32 in a matter of minutes once we're down to solo black belt.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even go to 30. I would go, or to 32, you go to 28 or something, and then, because you're going to have to kill things as you go through Volcano and Sky and Sea.
So we see Darkmoon also using items right now for his characters, simply so that they don't actually do anything, and then hope that this eye kills off people. I will admit, if there is one major downside to finding the eye tile as your grind spot, is that the eye does not do a very good job at all of killing off your characters. It's not very strong when it comes to punching, and if it doesn't have a spell script that would be casting anything deadly, then it's going to take some time. So I think that's why we're seeing Darkmoon EX fighting red gargoyles right now, in hopes that they're going to do a better job of that exact thing.
Yeah, they'll do a bit more punching, and the eye is normally dangerous for its spells.
So we see the red gargoyles using Exfer on everyone, leaving them defenseless. Hopefully we don't see that paired with some sort of an insta-kill spell, because this could have turned into an incredibly horrible decision.
But it's dark. It's dark and scary.
Yeah, it's only dark and scary, which to our black belt means nothing.
You could run into some evil monsters, like maybe some gargoyles. Okay. And Life Reboot is certainly using the waterfall to level here. It looks like he's found a gas dragon. It looks like it's right off the reset. So it's a green dragon. The way the encounters work is really interesting, because they didn't have a good random number generator. So we shuffle it around, but you have this table where every time you walk a step, it increments and you get a different number. And if that number is greater than a certain amount, then you have an encounter. I know F. Coughlin has come up with an entire different strategy of beating this game based on RNG manipulation, using this deterministic pseudo random number generator and using the faults in it, which I think is fascinating, and a really good way of showing just how much we know about how these games were coded.
Yeah, I think we've certainly seen some good encounter manipulation going on for our runners on screen. I know I've seen Darkmoon resetting multiple times to sort of cut encounters out of the table. So if anyone has been wondering why our runners have been doing random resets, that has been the reason for seeing that.
Yeah, and gas dragons are one of these encounters that does, I mean, they're 7,400 experience, so you get more experience per fight. Just gas dragons bite a little bit harder than that eye did.
Yeah, they're punching pretty hard. That's why I think Life Reboot was using the Ruse Stick in the meantime while he was trying to kill the White Mage off. Really can't blame him for that. It is a really good grind, much like some of the other fan favorite grinds, such as Blue Stake or Red Stake as well. Stake and Wings, if possible, over in the desert. Those can be extremely dangerous, but also some of the best XP you could possibly find.
Yeah, it's always. I always think there's a lot of maybe a little too much emphasis placed on experience per encounter, when it's really experience per second that you should be worried about, right? How long does it take you to get to the level you're after? And I mean, we can see Life Reboot is out, save, reset, back in, 3 steps, Gas Dragon. So that's going really fast for him. Darkmoon's just taking quite a bit of time to get his grind set up, which can be a little bit frustrating as a runner. It's like, you know what you want to do, but the game won't quite cooperate enough for you to get there and to get it done.
Yeah, I certainly have had seeds before where the first encounter off of the hard reset is way more than 3 steps, meaning that it's almost like hard reset grinds aren't worth it unless you're getting something as crazy as like a 12k XP blue stake, as opposed to just finding a grind tile that maybe is, 3,000, 4,000 per tile, but it just goes that much quicker.
Yeah, and here we see the power of that grind for Darkmoon. So he finally got it started. 1 hit, 2 steps, 1 hit, 1 level. 19, 20, 21, 22. So Life Reboot is, 28 now or so?
Yep, and I wonder where he'll be stopping the grind here. I mean, assuming that the Masa is our endgame weapon, I believe the breakpoints for hits on the Masa are 25 and 35 then for the night?
Well, it's always, as soon as we throw in the pluses and minuses on the gear, it really changes. But we don't have the Masa yet. We have a Sun Sword +2, I believe, is what he's using right now. Which is a little lower, but it looks like high 20s is where he'll stop, which is very reasonable.
So we see Life Reboot actually leaving one of his party members down. I think that's a very good play in this instance. Once you have your grind done, you probably don't need your full party to support that grinded character until you make it back to the Temple of Fiends for the end game. And so leaving a party member down is just going to make the rest of the seed that much faster when you have one less person to deal with, or one less person getting XP, or one less person that AoE spells from enemies are hitting, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, it is time in combat, and you just don't have to worry about having to pick an action for that person or do anything. So it looks like we did find the Oxy Ale. That must have been in Waterfall. So now we're cruising through here, and Life Reboot's heading down to that friendly chest.
Yep, which is in that room right here that he is walking into now.
And that is our incentivized ribbon. I mean, the +3 is nice, but ribbon provides resistance to every element in the game, so it is a very useful and very critical piece of gear for our endgame.
Yeah, I gotta say, I always like when I see ribbons roll up, because there are a lot of games where if you have some scary endgame fights that you know are coming your way, it might actually be a good idea to put the ribbon on, say, your black belt, who would normally have tons of magic defense just in and of themselves. And then to add the ribbon on top of that, you would be removing all of their absorb, which may not be worth it, since our black belts do have absorb equal to their level when they're not wearing any armor. But when the ribbon rolls up, it just makes it sort of that much easier of a decision to say, well, I'm not losing all of my absorb at least, although it's only 3 in this case. It's still something.
Yes, thank you, Random Value. That's the robot. Why there's a robot stuck behind the waterfall, I don't know, but that's what he is and what he's doing. And our tracker Magius points out that if Life Reboot had gone into Marsh and picked up the bottle, it'd be in go mode right now, rather than just heading down to fight the squid. No ADR. We say nope to cope.
Yeah, certainly making the decision to not grab that bottle might come back and haunt Life Reboot a little bit. But luckily with the airship, it does make some of these backtracking checks that much faster, especially with Marsh when you can just land right there at the entrance. It certainly decreases the amount of travel time to get there. Although an exit spell might make that even faster, and I don't believe we've seen exit yet, unless I have just completely missed what magic has been popping up. And thanks to our tracker, it looks like we have not found exit yet.
Yeah, so Dark Moon headed here to Sky.
It's about time.
And if you're wondering about Cope is the guy wandering around right outside of the submarine that takes you down to the Sea Shrine. There are a handful of NPCs in this game that have names, and they have become community mascots, and and we all pick the ones that we love, and we all pick the ones that we would rather not deal with or would like to see murdered.
See, my favorite, personally, is the caravan owner whose name is Underhill, because you just land your airship directly on his head and then talk to him. I think that's pretty great.
Yeah, I love Hooray Dwarf. I like Bubbles. Bubbles is a mermaid who wonders if she turns into bubbles when she dies. And then Cope gets in your way, so I say nope to Cope.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar, although I have to say I usually end up guillotining Bubbles, although I do always talk to the Hooray Dwarf. Honestly, I think my most disliked NPC probably goes to Mohawk Guy and Provoca, though. He always gets in my way.
He's just a jerk. Nobody that I know of actually roots for him. Dark Moon, finding that he has the adamant, well, am I reading this? If I'm reading this right, oh no, the adamant is going to have a ruby inside of it, and in the Titan's Trove we're going to have Masa. So I was thinking that the adamant might actually turn into a sword.
It would be funny if we see that, although not quite vanilla, just about as close as we could get.
Yeah, so Life Reboot just... It's like, yeah, go away, wolves, we don't need to see you.
So it looks like, updating our off-stream runners, that we do have our first place finisher. It appears that Dead Pulse has finished with a racetime.gg time of 55 minutes and 58 seconds. So congrats and GG's out to Dead Pulse.
Yeah, GG's Dead Pulse, and we will keep going here. Both of these runners are very close to the end here. We need... Dark Moon needs the Oxyel from the robot, and he needs the loot from Sarda, which is just stop in and pick it up, where Life Reboot needs to turn in that bottle for the chime, and clear out a couple of fiends.
Oh, absolutely. I think it was something I was pretty bad at, thinking how much time it would take to actually light the orbs at the end of a run, but with these grinded out characters, it should be relatively quick for our runners to get into the dungeons, get the orbs lit, and then make their way to Topher. So I would not be surprised if we're seeing either of our runners inside Topher under 10 minutes from now.
Let's see, Sky's a little longer, but with the lower dungeon rate, yeah, I could see especially Life Reboot being there in about 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we write that down and see if you really are a witch?
Maybe now I'm just making preposterous guesses to lead you off my track.
And here's that red stake you were talking about. The Tyro, the red dinosaur.
Yep, you might see some of the runners. There's a fun % flag to turn the Tyro and the T-Rex both into actual stake pixelated pictures. Doesn't look like we get to see that with Dark Moon, sadly, but it's always a fun one.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to correct myself. That's the red dinosaur you want to see. There's also a red dinosaur you never want to see, the R. Ankylos.
Ah, yes, good point. There's a reason why our hardcore league is called R. Ankylo.
Yeah, and if you're not in the know, then that is a difficult endgame mob that just high resistances, high health, high absorb, doesn't do the most damage, but it's just one of those things. It doesn't give you a lot of experience. It doesn't give you a lot of gold. It's just like annoying and in the way and hard to get around.
And just like that, we see both of our runners picking up some of the missing incentive items that they've had. It looks like Life Reboot is now in go mode, diving into air to take out the third Fiend, as Darkmoon is checking our Titan's Trove chest, which does turn into the Masa then. Masa +1 too.
We have a big stick. And that Ice 2 axe is actually pretty nice. That'll be a nice little sweeper spell to throw on one of those white mages or maybe the black belt. Just another cast that does damage to help get past the packs.
Certainly, and if our team had, say, 2 fighters who could swing, I mean, that Ice Axe, I believe, is actually the Light Axe, just re-rolled from Harm 2 to Ice 2. But at +3, it's in and of its own right a pretty decent weapon too.
Yeah, no, it's a very reasonable mid-game. I probably wouldn't put it as an end-game weapon, but it's not bad.
Yeah, I don't think that's killing any fiends unless you're stacking like maybe 3+ casts of Saber on the user.
Yeah, and Life Reboot, you're on the wrong floor. This is buying Darkmoon some time to get back into this.
Yeah, I wonder what Life Reboot might be looking for. Maybe an Aegis Shield or something else for the Knight to wear to become a better tank.
I think he's looking for the Adamant. He's either looking for Tail, which will allow his thief to wield katana.
Yep, that's a very good point. I missed that he did not have the tail yet. Yeah, that'll make a huge difference. I mean, certainly the katana could be an endgame weapon or definitely a good backup strat if it's not who you're focusing on with all of your, say, temper casts coming from temper helmet or, the initial wall cast or something. It's a good backup strat.
Yeah, well, having a second person who can do reasonable damage is always a good thing. And that's what the thief is good at. He gives out quite a bit of melee damage with that katana, since that's basically it's a better Vorpal. I always thought the Manticores looked like they either have sunglasses or they have an eye patch on.
There are a lot of these old monsters that as a kid I could never quite understand what they were going for.
And here we are on the Bridge of Destiny. Unfortunately, our encounter rate is pretty low, so we're unlikely to get our Lord and Master.
Yep, no
Our
robot
savior.
chickens. Did see some red fire hydrants though, but did not end up taking them, which at this point probably makes sense given that our grind is over. There's no real need to stop and kill a pack, even if it is pretty XP dense.
Yeah, it's just not worth the time at this point. The only thing that matters is getting this Orblet and getting over to Volcano.
So, fun little note on Darkmoon's side, he actually gave the Masa to one of the White Mages, which is a strat a lot of people like to refer to as White Samurai. Which, with a +1, the White Mage could still do some decent damage.
Well, and with a Temper cast and have either Ruse or having Invis 2, I don't remember if we saw Ruse or not, but it's solo White Mage with Masa and some way of increasing your damage is a very, very viable strat, and I think Monochi was famous for using that.
Yep, looking back at our tracker's notes, it looks like at level 6 was Ruse, as well as Cure 4 being at level 5 and Wall being at level 2, means that our White Mages could very easily stay alive for long amounts of time during the Fiend fight. So, It would be maybe sad if Dark Moon found himself in a position to need a white mage to kill, say, Chaos, but I think for those of us viewing, it would be a pretty good show to see that.
Oh yeah, White Samurai is always fun and always a crowd pleaser because it's exciting, right? It's one character and you never know when you're going to get zapped or otherwise just that one shot. One of the great things about the way this combat system is set up is that even if you're resistant and protected from something, there's always a chance.
It's a very, very low chance, but not impossible, just very improbable. And that goes for monsters as well, too. I mean, you could sit there and cast the Quake Stick multiple times on Chaos, and you might eventually get it. Could take a while, you might eventually get it.
Yeah, you just have to hope he doesn't kill you first.
So we see Life Reboot diving into the volcano to light their final orb, as well as Dark Moon diving into water for their third orb. I think at this rate, my prediction might come true, depending on how much adversity Life Reboot runs into inside Volcano. You might note, though, for anyone who's newer out there, that Life Reboot is attempting to step on as many lava tiles as possible, and the reason for that is you can't take encounters while stepping on the lava. So if you're looking to get through Volcano as fast as possible, the more damage you take from the lava tiles turns into the more time saved from not having to take encounters as you dive down into Volcano.
Right, and with this low dungeon encounter rate, it's not as critical. So there's certainly he's missed a few steps, but you will see runners like in this after we go down this stairwell that will go up because it's one tile fewer. Right, it's only one step to get to the lava and then walk in the lava all the way around.
And certainly when we run into these unrunnable fights like we're seeing Life Reboot right now, any of those encounters you can save probably ends up being a large time save overall.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are 2 seconds, but some of them might be 45 seconds, and that's a big chunk of time. So Dark Moon lighting his third orb, but still one to go, still needs to come through Volcano, so about 3 minutes or so behind.
Yep, and on Life Reboot side, we see Carrie going down to a cast of Fade, and with that, Life Reboot can officially enter Topher. Noting that Topher in this flag set is both short, and you only have to do 2 refights, as not all 4 tiles are on both sides, which means, depending on what we see, if you go one direction, you might not get, say, Tiamat and have to refight them, which is very nice and certainly makes Topher a little safer. Also, you will see the teleporter there in the middle. The other flag that's turned on is Topher actually has an exit to it, so if for any reason you wanted to leave and then come back in, that is possible, whereas normally you would have to use exit or warp to get yourself back out.
The Fiends dying doesn't save, though.
That is very true. Since it is a trap tile, you would have to refight. But that does enable a very, very off-meta strat of using the Fiend refights to grind, which I've never personally done, but I do find the concept of it pretty funny.
And this is an interesting decision. You run into... So the 4 Fiends are put in a random position, so you don't know which one you're going to get. So we're taking Tiamat too. It's an interesting call. I mean, it could be Lich and Carry on the other side, and it could be Kraken behind this. We don't know. So actually taking this rather than doing a quick reset out and come back in and try the other side is an interesting choice.
Yeah, I think personally I probably would have reset as soon as I saw Tia, just hoping that the other side was going to be much, much easier. And given that these Fiends still are only rolling 50% to 200% on stats, and these Fiend refights are a separate roll from the original fights for the orb lighting, there's still a better chance that Tiamat's going to be a bigger wall than any of the other 3 Fiends.
Yeah, just bigger base health, bigger base stats for everything. But the spells are shuffled around, so who knows who will have what.
And another quick update for our off-stream runners. We have second place Edgeworth finishing with a racetime.gg time of 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 33 seconds, as well as third place Gregley Puff finishing at 1:06:59, and fourth place Pickles and Beer finishing 1:08:16. So get your GGs out in chat for some more runners who have finished.
So it looks like it's Tiamat Carry, and then it's Lich, and then Kraken. Oh, and Lich has Bane, which is wrecking Darkmoon's party. That's where those Pro Ring should have protected against that. But Darkmoon says, no thank you, Bane killing off my party members. I'm going to go in and try the other side.
That Tia falling almost immediately to the Masa. Yeah, 320 damage coming from a white mage is pretty great, I have to admit. I mean, actually more damage than came out from the knight with the +2 Sun Sword.
We do get a nuke from Carry, but Darkmoon just tanks it, runs right on through, and we're going to have dueling chaos. So how's that for a stream?
That's always fun to see. We have Darkmoon switching up his white mages up front, since they certainly lose a lot of their efficiency for Chaos, since you no longer need them as life casters, but still being a backup strat for Fade and Holy makes sense.
Yeah, I'll focus on life reboot. He's putting up Bruise, but Chaos had Zap, and that came out and wiped out the Thief.
Ooh, same thing happening to Darkmoon. Everyone but the black belt going down to that Zap has gotta hurt. But with the Ruse Stick and the high natural magic defense, that black belt solo should be pretty good.
Chaos also has Cure 4, so this may be a temper up and one shot kind of fight. And fast, so you better hope you have your ruses up.
We see Darkmoon punching for 540 damage, 5 hits for 538 damage. Chaos rolled a little bit above, certainly was not at the 50% mark as far as stats go.
Yeah, life reboot with this fighter stopping to temper up. And we see Darkmoon as pulled ahead with that black belt, Fist of Fury. So GG Darkmoon.
Yep, GG to Darkmoon with an official racetime.gg time of 1 hour, 10 minutes, and 55 seconds.
Chaos must have a short spell list because Zap came around again. Fighter hitting for about 492. Throwing up another temper, so he says that I'm not doing enough damage with that Cure 4, we gotta wait.
Alright, and we are joined in the booth by Darkmoon. Darkmoon, GG's, man.
Hey, thank you.
Well, and let's hold on just a second.
Yeah.
Life Reboot is fighting Chaos. Chaos, so he's throwing tempers on his fighter, coming out hitting 712, 3 hits for 712 that time, so I would call that good damage, and Life Reboot agrees, hits again. This time only 1 hit for 138, so that Sun Sword just not quite hitting enough, or hitting often enough.
Yeah, the apparent lack of black magic, meaning we don't have access to lock this seed coming in, hurting a little bit on this Chaos.
Yeah, there he threw one more Tempers, got a couple more hits for another 1,000 damage total. He should be getting real close, but we'll see when that Cure 4 comes around again. Zap misses, and so does Life Reboot's fighter. Another 250 damage. It's the race. Does he get the hit in first? He does. 4 hits, 884, and GG Life Reboot.
Alright, GG to all our runners. And we are also joined in the booth by Life Reboot. Life Reboot, GG's as well.
Hey, thank you. GG.
So, given Darkmoon that you did pop up in here just a little bit sooner, why don't you go ahead and start us off? How'd you feel about this seed?
It wasn't bad. When you saw that starting party of like all melee and white mages, I guess that was a little disheartening. It totally threw me off what I probably would have done for this otherwise. I might have gone like fighter, nun, black mage, white mage, or at least taken a thief and made them a nun, or a like a black belt nun, white mage, black mage, something like that for this. The party we got though totally precluded that, so it took a little readjustment there. I probably took a suboptimal party, all things considered. If I'd dropped a couple characters early and just run two-man melee and white mage, probably would have been better. And I lost, like 3 minutes trying to get my grind to start in Ordeal because nothing wanted to kill my unarmored characters. But, beyond that, everything worked great. I was very, very happy with this in general, and, I mean, for the most part, kept up with the pack. For my first time running these, I really wanted to do.
Alright, give it to me straight though. How happy were you when you found that Quake stick?
Oh my god, that was like just a sigh of relief right there so early. Sitting there going, well, pirates are taken care of, Lich can be taken care of, although I think I ended up killing him without because he resisted it. A lot of the undead are gonna fall, all the early enemies are gonna fall. This is not the best spell I could have gotten on this for like the entire game, but man, that Quake stick made the early game so much easier. It was great.
Yeah, well, and I want to say, and bring Life Reboot in for this, so we picked the right two guys to have on stream because you guys were neck and neck almost the whole race. I mean, there were a few little divergences, like Darkmoon went Marsh early, but you guys were right there, and Life Reboot actually engaged Chaos a little sooner.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess the one question about that is, so Darkmoon, obviously you went Black Belt and you kept your Black Belt alive. Well, Life Reboot actually danned his Black Belt and had a Fighter White Mage Thief.
Yeah.
For most of the seed. So could you guys talk about your party choices and how you feel that affected you as the seed went on?
Sure. You want to go first?
Yeah, Darkmoon, GG.
GG.
I think one of these like questions is always like when you're faced with do you go black belt or do you go fighter, you just have to commit at some point. And I know that black belt strats is going to lap someone in Topher, but for short Topher it's really like it can depending on how the enemies roll, it can be neck and neck. It's just, I was imagining, I don't know how good of a grind I'm going to find during the game. I decided to go fighter strats. Seems like black belt might have been the right choice. I'm curious, Darkmoon, where you ended up grinding.
Ordeals, the eye was the tile at the top, which you didn't get tail, so you didn't see it. The eye was the nightmare tile. And I just basically killed off the rest of my party and sat there with my black belt, punching them to 32, and then used 32 as my baseline. Because you're not wrong, short Topher preclude like as much power, and a 32 black belt, especially with the temper helmet I found in the roost stick, I'm sitting there going, I can solo chaos if I have to on 32, and I end up having to.
Thank you. I understand, and I skipped ordeals entirely, like you're saying. And I grinded on the first encounter in Waterfall was a gas dragon, and the shorts like 2 steps off the hard reset for the first encounter. I figured that was good enough, and then that got me through Kraken and felt pretty good. I bounced off the black orb because I forgot that I hadn't killed Carrie yet. That was my only goof. I feel like
probably would have won otherwise then. Between us.
Might have been close.
Yeah, well, like I said, you guys had engaged Chaos. Life Reboot was, maybe 3 seconds ahead in engaging Chaos, because you guys saw some very different things from the Fiend refights. I mean, like Darkmoon, Tiamat 2 took you, one swing? Where Life Reboot struggled a bit with Tiamat 2, breezed through Carrie, but then Darkmoon found a nuke on Carrie.
That was a little scary.
Yeah, so it was really interesting because you guys were so close, but then you were seeing completely different things out of the fights. I think Dark Moon, you also saw a nuclear out of Chaos.
Yeah, there was a nuclear, but I think that pinged off me. That wasn't a big deal. The zap on Lich was the scariest part, and I honestly, now that I go back and think about it, I don't think I ever actually re-equipped any of the armor on any of my guys. Not that it actually mattered, because they had black belt. Who cares? I mean, at that point, I was just like, motor, I'm just going. It doesn't matter now. But if I thought to move the ribbon down to the black belt, that probably would have stopped the zap from causing problems, and I might have tried to man mode it on the first attempt I made.
Yeah, we never did see what Kraken 2 had.
Yeah.
So why don't we switch gears for a second and talk about how you guys felt about the routing this. I don't know if either of you had done many practice sessions beforehand, but I'm curious to see if the routing in this seed was pretty similar or pretty different. I think both of you had to just make your vanilla way over to Crescent by using the outside dock, and then Life Reboot, I think you attempted to skip Marsh as well, but ended up having to go back for that bottle. So why don't we start with you, Life Reboot? How'd you feel about the route on this seed?
I felt okay. Like you're mentioning, I did go over to Crescent, got the canoe, went into ice, conquered that, completed that rather long chain, and it was getting deep, and I was like, this has to be floater, this has to be floater. Landed at Crown Astos for the floater, so I was like, thank goodness. And then once I had that, I could, get around easier. That's when I finally decided to go to Marsh. That's when I, got over to Sarda. And the North Continent, I don't know if I was first there or what, but I've only done 2 of these seeds so far, both of them part of these qualifiers. So the first seed that I ran, I bounced off of the Sages because I didn't realize that early Sages was disabled, and I may have bounced off of Ordeals, I don't remember. But I just put a gentle reminder in the chat before everyone started. I was like, don't bounce off of Ordeals or Sages. That's the biggest thing to remember in this flag set, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Here in the booth, I had repeatedly made that mistake, saying such things as, oh, Ordeals could be the next place they go to, forgetting that you needed the crown and didn't have it until later on in the seed. So it's definitely a good thing to remind yourself of. Dark Moon, were there anything that you felt was different about this seed, or was it pretty normal to what you've seen in the past?
This is my first run, so I have no clue. I mean, but the thing with Zero Loose, the way it's set up right now, you pretty much know what your route's going to be no matter what. You just I just keep the incentive list open in front of me, and I'm like, okay, what's closed? What can I do? Which is why I did the March play earlier, even though I hate March. I had decent levels for the time, and I only had to go target one chest because I knew exactly where the incentive was. That's part of the reason why these feel like black belt flags, even if the scaling is low for experience. You only have to check chests really behind 2 locations, Earth and Sky, and all the rest of them you could just go straight to the incentive chests if you wanted to. Anything you pick up beyond that, which I picked up a little just in case I could get something decent for my knight and make them viable instead of the black belt, that's great. This particular seed, everything that was really worthwhile was so late. Like that Mazamoon, that would have made my fighter solo this one. It just didn't matter at that point. This was black belt through and through. But that's the bonus of fast Zero Loose flags like these, is either could be optimal, and then you just have to kind of figure out how you're gonna make it work.
Something else that's probably good to point out for our runners, as well as anyone else out there who's thinking about running in the qualifier, there are 10 total races, and only your 3 best times are the ones that count. So as we are only on the 2nd race right now, there are 8 more to go. And if you were to, say, not do so hot on the earlier ones, learn the seed better, and then do great on the later ones, only the later ones end up mattering for your qualifying time. So there's certainly a lot of time to still learn what this flag set could possibly throw at you. So I can't blame you at all for not seeing much of this one yet, but you are certainly correct that at least in the early game, that order in which you do everything is pretty much predetermined by just sort of what you get. So
yeah.
Oh, sorry, Weirdo, go ahead.
No, go for it if you have one.
Oh, well, I was just gonna, switch gears again with another topic for our runners. I'm curious how you felt about the draft pool and the blessings. Certainly, there were a couple blessings and curses out there that I would personally be very afraid of, specifically seeing that -1 M death per level on the black belt, or minus pro ring on the fighter. I don't know if either of you two felt very strongly about how the blurses were, or have any other comments in general.
I mean, you go ahead. You go ahead.
In my opinion, that -1 M death per level in the black belt is not a significant thing. I think he gets 4 per level, so he gets 3 instead of 4, not a big change. And the minus pro ring on the fighter just means give him the ribbon, right?
Yep, that's right.
So that's basically what I went into. I looked at that draft pool and I was thinking, this is a weird collection of party members without the access to black magic. I'm gonna have to take a collection of, like, give me options and then Dan either the fighter and go black belt, or Dan the black belt and go fighter at some point. And I didn't really like that party selection screen. I felt like it was the only way to go, though.
Well, and that was the reason why I went fighter black belt double white. Was I was banking on finding Holy at some point, which Holy level 4 was nice. I got a little use out of that. Not nearly as much as it had been like level 2, for example. But also, when you don't have any of that black magic, you pretty much have to go as good as you can, power overwhelming. And that kind of tipped towards the black belt. The Temper Helm I found in Elflock made it a little more like I could look for that Mazamoon, and if I got it early enough, then the fighter was the case. But by the time I got to Ordeals, didn't have the Maza, wasn't sure when I was getting it, and knew I just needed to go. The grind for the black belt made the most sense, and then at that point, black magic really didn't matter because you're casting punch at that.
Yep, the best spell in the game.
Yep.
Punch.
Punch.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and wrap it up here. Final thoughts, live reboot?
It sounds like Dark Moon, we gave a pretty close show. I'm glad to have raced with you. GG again.
GG.
And congrats for your first qualifier.
Thanks. Yeah, GG's to you as well. That was a fun time, honestly. It's, as I said in the chat room, you're not really racing the other players in these flags because it's your time is your points, and that's that. And you're just trying to get good seed points for the next stage of the event, the pods. So it's just you versus the clock, and I kind of focused on that so that it didn't feel like a race, because then I wasn't getting as nervous, and as the other players started filing in, I didn't have to think like, oh man, there goes points for me or my team or something, because that didn't really matter. I'm not on the hook for that, and that's really nice. These are fun flags, and this is going to be a fun event because we're running them all the way through. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to doing this. I'm going to try and compete as many of these qualifiers as I can, just for the practice of it, even though I only need to race 3, because, man, yeah, I need to figure out optimal party for this. It took me 4 or 5 tries on the spring tournament pods this year to figure out the party that was optimal for me, and gonna be the same here, I think.
Yeah, no, we look forward to seeing you guys again, and we'll also, as always, we try to bring in a mix of runners and a mix of time so everybody gets a shot at these qualifiers. So thank you both for being here and for being willing to have your races streamed. So otherwise, I do want to thank our tracker, Magius, who is a longtime veteran of the community, and certainly someone who is often seen in these races. So thank you. Every bit of the tracking that goes on, and for helping us make fewer mistakes. Right, we still made plenty, but those are ours and not his. And then thank you, Velik, for casting with me. It's been a while since I've been in the booth, but it's been kind of fun. So even if your predictive powers are a little scary.
Yeah, maybe I should have ran the race myself if I just kind of knew where everything was at ahead of time. But thank you very much as well, Weirdo. Had a great time running comms with you. Thank you to Magius for tracking, and certainly thank you for Speed Gaming as well for helping us and allowing us into this tournament and putting this all on. It's been tons of fun to see all the runners and everything. For anyone else interested out there, our next qualifier race will be on September 29th. That is a Wednesday, 10 days from now at 10 p.m. Eastern. So come out and watch the qualifiers again. It's certain to be another fun race, or possibly, racing it yourself if possible. And if that's just not enough Final Fantasy Randomizer for you, we also have our Fall League going on with races happening on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. So there's plenty of FFR to go around.
Well, I think that's all for us here. So, everyone, and we will see you next time.